My father kicked me out of the house because of a stepmother, without thinking about what would happen. Brandon felt his world crumbling as his father's words echoed through the hallway of the home where he'd grown up. The argument had started simply enough in the kitchen, but now he was sitting on the cold sidewalk with a backpack, trying to process what had just happened. "Choose, either her or me," Vanessa, his stepmother, had said, pointing her finger at Brandon. "I can't live in this house anymore with this spoiled boy who won't accept our relationship." Brandon had tried to defend his grandmother, Edith, who had once again been treated rudely by the woman. Grandma Edith, 75, had lived with them since Brandon was a child, shortly after his mother passed away. She had always been the family's rock, taking care of the house and raising her grandson with endless love. "Dad, she can't treat Grandma like that," Brandon protested, watching his stepmother yell at the elderly woman for leaving a pot on the stove. "Walter, are you going to let this brat talk to me like that?" Vanessa crossed her arms, her face red with anger. "I can't take this anymore." Brandon's father stayed silent for a few seconds that felt like an eternity. Walter Thompson, a 55-year-old man who had always been protective of his family, looked from Brandon to Vanessa, then to his own mother, who watched quietly from the living room. "Brandon, I think it's best if you find somewhere else to stay for a while," he finally said, avoiding his son's eyes. "Dad, are you serious?" Brandon couldn't believe what he was hearing. "It's just until things calm down." Walter tried to soften the blow, but his voice sounded distant. "No, Walter," Vanessa interrupted. "Either he leaves for good, or I do. There's no middle ground." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. Brandon stared at his father, waiting for him to stand up for their family. But Walter just lowered his head and murmured, "Pack your bags, son." Now, here he was at 22 years old, staring at the house where he'd spent his entire life, unable to understand how things had come to this. His stepmother had entered their lives 2 years ago when she met Walter at a work party. Vanessa, 40, was beautiful and charming, quickly winning over the lonely widower. At first, she had been affectionate toward Brandon and respectful to Grandma Edith. But little by little things changed. It started with small comments about Brandon's messiness, then complaints about Grandma Edith moving too slowly around the house. Over time, Vanessa created a tense atmosphere, always pitting Walter against his own family. Brandon got up from the sidewalk when he noticed neighbors peeking curiously through their windows. He didn't want to become the neighborhood gossip. He walked through the streets of Oakwood Heights, carrying only a backpack with some clothes and his documents. He didn't have much money, just what was left from his last job as an assistant at an electronics store. Night was falling and he needed a place to sleep. He thought of Professor Arthur, who had always shown him kindness during high school. The 62-year-old man lived alone not too far away in a simple but cozy home. Brandon took the bus to the professor's neighborhood, his chest tightening with every mile that took him farther from home. During the ride, he tried calling his father several times, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Had Walter turned off his phone, or was he just ignoring him? When he arrived at Professor Arthur's house, he hesitated before ringing the doorbell. He didn't want to seem like a freeloader, but he didn't have many options. The professor opened the door, still in his bathrobe, surprised to see his former student standing there. "Brandon, what are you doing here at this hour?" he asked, noticing the backpack on the young man's shoulders. "Professor, I had a problem at home. Can I talk to you?" Arthur opened the door fully and invited him inside. In the small but tidy living room, Brandon recounted the whole situation, trying to keep his composure. The professor listened quietly, shaking his head with concern. "That woman is manipulating your father, Brandon. I've seen this happen to many men my age. They become vulnerable after losing their wives and end up in the hands of selfish people." "But what can I do, Professor? My father chose her." "For now, you stay here with me. I have a guest room I don't use. Tomorrow we'll figure out a more permanent solution." Brandon felt momentary relief, but his heart still ached thinking of Grandma Edith alone at home with Vanessa. The elderly woman had always been gentle and polite, unable to defend herself against direct attacks. How was she handling the situation? The next morning, Brandon woke up determined not to give up on his family. As he had coffee with the professor, his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello? Brandon, my boy? It's me." It was Grandma Edith's weak voice. Brandon's heart raced. "Grandma, how did you get my number?" "I took it secretly from your room. Brandon, I need to tell you something important. That woman, she's not who she says she is." The call abruptly ended. Brandon tried calling back, but the number wouldn't connect. Worried, he decided to stop by the house to check on his grandmother. Maybe he could talk to her while Vanessa wasn't around. When he got close to the house, he saw his father's car in the garage and decided to wait for him to leave for work. He watched from afar, hidden behind a tree. Half an hour later, he saw Walter rush out, looking nervous. Brandon took the chance and went to the kitchen window, where he always saw Grandma Edith in the mornings. The elderly woman was sitting at the table but looked different, thinner, with a distant gaze. He tapped lightly on the glass and waved. Grandma Edith looked up, her eyes filling with tears. She motioned for him to go around and come in through the back door. "My dear grandson." She hugged him tightly. "How are you? Where did you sleep?" "I'm fine, Grandma. And you? How are they treating you?" Grandma Edith glanced around before answering, as if afraid of being overheard. "Brandon, that woman is doing strange things. Yesterday, she went through your personal belongings and took some papers from your father's drawer, and there's more." "What else, Grandma?" "I heard her on the phone talking to someone about selling things from the house. She mentioned your mother's jewelry in the safe." Brandon felt a surge of anger. His mother's jewelry was practically the only physical reminder he had of her. Vanessa had no right to touch it. "Grandma, do you know where the house documents are?" "They're in the safe with the jewelry." "Why do you ask?" "I just want to make sure everything's safe." Grandma Edith went to a flower pot in the kitchen and pulled out a small key from the soil. "This is the spare key to the safe. Your father doesn't know I have it. Keep it with you." Brandon took the key, realizing how important it could be in the future. They talked for a few more minutes until they heard Vanessa's car pulling in. "Go, my boy. I don't want her to see you here and cause more trouble." Brandon left through the back and returned to the professor's house, his mind racing with ideas. He needed to find out what Vanessa really wanted and why she was so determined to push him and his grandmother out of Walter's life. That afternoon, he decided to investigate further. He went to the store where he used to work to talk to his old boss, who had always been understanding. "Brandon, good to see you. I heard you had trouble at home. Want to talk?" Mr. Joe was a simple, straightforward man, the owner of a small electronics shop downtown. Brandon had always admired his honesty and sharp judgment of people. "Mr. Joe, do you know someone named Vanessa Wilson? She's lived in the neighborhood for about 2 years." "Vanessa Wilson? That name sounds familiar. Let me think. Oh, I know. Isn't she that woman who goes to the betting house up the street?" Brandon's eyes widened. A betting house? Vanessa had never mentioned anything about gambling. "Are you sure?" "Of course, son. My wife works at the pharmacy across the street and always mentions seeing her go in there every week. In fact, they say she owes a good amount to the owner of the place. This changed everything." Brandon began to understand why Vanessa was so interested in the family's assets. It wasn't just jealousy or wanting Walter all to herself. It was about money. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, back to the story. He returned to Professor Arthur's house with a new perspective on the situation. Arthur was preparing dinner when Brandon arrived. "Professor, I found out something important about Vanessa. She goes to betting houses and has debts." "That explains a lot, Brandon. People with gambling addictions are capable of anything to get money. Your father might be in financial danger. I need to warn him, but he won't answer my calls. Maybe it's better to have concrete proof before making accusations. People in love rarely believe criticism about their partners without solid evidence." Brandon spent the night thinking about how to get that proof. The next day, he decided to stake out the betting house to confirm what Mr. Joe had said. He watched from a distance all morning until around noon he saw Vanessa arriving. She went inside and stayed for almost 2 hours. When she came out, she was visibly upset, talking loudly on her phone. Brandon overheard part of the conversation. "No, I haven't gotten it yet. He's very cautious about these things. Yes, I know the deadline is running out. I'm trying, but that brat messed everything up by coming back home." Brandon followed Vanessa from a distance and saw her enter a nearby cafe. To his surprise, she met up with a man he didn't know. They talked intimately, and Brandon saw the man caress her hand over the table. This was too much. Vanessa not only had gambling debts, but was also cheating on Walter. Brandon discreetly took some photos with his phone and decided it was time to act. He went back to Professor Arthur's house and showed him the pictures. Arthur shook his head sadly. "Your father needs to know this, Brandon. But you have to be strategic. If you accuse her out of the blue, he might not believe you and pull even further away from you. What do you suggest? How about talking to your grandmother first? She might have valuable information and could be the best person to approach your father about this." Brandon decided to take his advice. The next day, he went back to the house when he was sure Vanessa had left. He found Grandma Edith even more downcast than before. "Grandma, how are you?" "Not too well, dear. That woman is getting more aggressive with me. Yesterday, she said I should look for a retirement home because I'm getting in the way of their lives." Brandon felt his blood boil. How could Vanessa dare treat an elderly woman who had never hurt anyone like that? "Grandma, I need to show you something, but promise you'll help me talk to Dad?" Brandon showed her the photos of Vanessa with the strange man. Grandma Edith was shocked. "Good heavens! I knew there was something off about that woman, but I never imagined this." "Grandma, she also has gambling debts. I think she's only interested in Dad's money." "Brandon, I need to tell you something else. Yesterday she asked about the house documents and how much the property is worth. She said she was just curious, but I thought it was strange. Do you know if the documents are safe?" "They're in the safe, but yesterday I saw her trying to figure out the combination. When she noticed me looking, she said she was just cleaning." Brandon realized the situation was more serious than he'd thought. Vanessa wasn't just causing family problems, she was planning something that could financially harm the entire family. "Grandma, would you trust me to take care of some important documents?" "Of course, my grandson. You're the person I trust most in the world." Grandma Edith went to the safe and opened it carefully. From inside, she took out some important papers, including the house deed. "Brandon, did you know this house is in my name?" "What do you mean, Grandma?" "When your grandfather bought it, he put it in my name to protect the family's assets. After he passed, I never transferred it to your father. The house is technically mine. This information was crucial. If the house was in Grandma Edith's name, Vanessa couldn't do anything with it without the elderly woman's permission. That explained why she was pushing so hard for her to move out. Grandma, you need to keep these documents somewhere else, and maybe it's important for you to make a will to get everything properly documented." "You're right, my dear. Tomorrow I'll go to the notary to sort this out." Brandon kept copies of the documents with him and left the house with a new strategy. Now he had enough information to confront the situation, but he needed to be smart about how to use it. That evening at the professor's house, Brandon organized everything he'd discovered. The photos of Vanessa with another man, the information about her gambling debts, and the fact that the house was in his grandmother's name. It was time to act. "Professor, I think I have enough to talk to my dad, but I need your help." "Of course, Brandon. What can I do?" "Could you arrange a meeting with him? Maybe he'll listen if you're there." Arthur called Walter and managed to convince him to meet the next day at a neutral cafe. He said it was about Brandon and that it was important. On the day of the meeting, Brandon was nervous. He hadn't seen his father in a week and didn't know how he'd react. Walter arrived at the cafe looking tired and thinner than Brandon remembered. "Hi, Dad." "Brandon, are you okay? Where have you been staying?" "At Professor Arthur's house." "Dad, we need to talk about a lot of things." Walter sighed and looked at Arthur, who gave an encouraging nod. "Go ahead, son." Brandon started slowly, talking about Vanessa's strange behavior toward Grandma Edith. Walter listened silently, but Brandon could tell he was uncomfortable. "Dad, I know you're in love, but you need to know some things about Vanessa." Brandon, I won't let you badmouth my wife. I'm not badmouthing her. I'm trying to protect our family. Brandon showed the photos of Vanessa with another man. Walter turned pale when he saw them. Where did you get these? By chance, Dad. I was passing by a cafe and saw her with this man. They looked very close. Walter stayed silent for several minutes, staring at the photos. Brandon took the opportunity to tell him about the gambling debts. Dad, she goes to betting houses and owes money. I confirmed it with people who work in the area. That can't be true, Professor Arthur can confirm. He knows people who've seen her there many times. Arthur nodded in agreement, keeping a respectful tone. Walter, I know it's hard to accept, but Brandon is worried about you and Grandma Edith. There's one more thing, Dad. Grandma told me Vanessa has been asking about the house documents and how much the property is worth. Walter looked up, now visibly upset. She said it was just curiosity. Dad, I don't think she's with you out of love. I think she's after our money. Walter stayed silent for a long time. Brandon could see the internal conflict his father was going through. On one side, the love he felt for Vanessa. On the other, the evidence his son was presenting. Brandon, even if all this is true, I can't just kick her out of the house. We're married. Dad, I'm not asking you to kick her out. I just want you to protect our family, especially Grandma Edith. How is she? Sad, Dad. Really sad. Vanessa has been cruel to her. Said Grandma should go to a nursing home. Walter ran his hand through his hair, clearly overwhelmed by everything. I need time to process all this, Brandon. I understand, Dad. But in the meantime, at least let me come home to take care of Grandma. She needs protection. Walter hesitated but finally agreed. All right, you can come back, but no trouble. I won't cause trouble, Dad. I just want to protect our family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us as we're just starting out. Now back to the story. Brandon returned home that afternoon, feeling a mix of relief and unease. Vanessa wasn't there when he arrived, and Grandma Edith greeted him with tears in her eyes. My dear grandson, I'm so glad you're back. How have you been, Grandma? Worse every day, Brandon. That woman is getting more aggressive. Yesterday, she yelled at me for leaving a cup in the sink. Brandon hugged his grandmother gently, determined not to let anyone mistreat her again. When Walter came home from work, he found Brandon helping Grandma Edith prepare dinner in the kitchen. His father seemed uncomfortable, but greeted him normally. Is Vanessa home? Not yet, Dad. Walter went to the bedroom and stayed there until Vanessa arrived around 9 that night. Brandon overheard their tense conversation, with her complaining about him being back. Walter, you promised he wouldn't come back. He's my son, Vanessa, and he needs to take care of my mother. Your mother can take care of herself, or go somewhere more suitable for someone her age. I'm not putting my mother in a nursing home. Then you choose. Either they leave or I do. Brandon listened, his stomach twisting. Vanessa was forcing his father to choose again. But this time, Walter didn't give in right away. Vanessa, please, let's find a solution that works for everyone. The solution is simple, they leave. The argument went on for another hour until Brandon heard the bedroom door slam and hurried footsteps down the hall. Vanessa had stormed out. Walter stayed in the room, silent. Brandon wanted to talk to him, but decided to give his father time to process everything. The next morning, Vanessa wasn't home. Walter had breakfast in silence while Brandon took care of Grandma Edith, who seemed happier with her grandson around. Dad, where's Vanessa? She said she's staying at a friend's place for a few days to think things over. Brandon saw it as the perfect chance to dig deeper into Vanessa's motives. With her gone, maybe he could find more clues about her plans. That afternoon, while Walter was at work, Brandon decided to look around the couple's bedroom. He didn't want to invade his father's privacy, but he felt he had to protect the family. In Vanessa's nightstand, he found some papers with numbers that looked like debts. There was also a real estate agent's business card and notes about property values in the area. Even more concerning, Brandon found a printed WhatsApp conversation between Vanessa and someone named Richard, where she said, "I'll get the money you need soon. I just have to get rid of the old lady and the kid first. Brandon took pictures of everything with his phone. Now he had concrete proof that Vanessa was planning to harm the family for money. When Walter came home from work, Brandon was waiting for him in the living room with a serious expression. "Dad, I need to show you something." "What is it now, Brandon?" "I found some things in the room that confirm what I've been trying to tell you about Vanessa." Brandon showed him the photos of the papers and the WhatsApp conversation. Walter was visibly shaken as he read the messages. She was planning to hurt us. Dad, she just wants the money, and she's pressuring you to get rid of me and Grandma to get access to our assets." Walter sank heavily onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "How could I have been so blind, Brandon? How didn't I see this before?" "You were in love, Dad. It happens to anyone. And now, what do I do? Now we protect our family, Dad, and we figure out what her real plan is." That night, Walter had a long talk with Grandma Edith, apologizing for letting her be mistreated. The elderly woman, with her years of wisdom, forgave her son immediately. "You were lost, my son. What matters is that you see the truth now." "Mom, can you forgive me for being so unfair?" "Of course I can. We're family, and families forgive." Brandon watched the conversation with emotion. Finally, it seemed things were getting back to normal. But Vanessa still hadn't returned, and Brandon knew she wouldn't give up easily. People desperate for money were capable of extreme actions. 2 days later, Vanessa came back. She walked into the house as if nothing had happened and greeted everyone normally. Brandon found her change in behavior odd. "Hi, honey." She kissed Walter on the cheek. "I missed you." "Vanessa, we need to talk." "Of course, love. But first, let me take a shower and relax a bit." Brandon observed the scene suspiciously. Vanessa was acting far too naturally for someone who had stormed out angry 2 days earlier. During dinner, she was exceptionally kind to Grandma Edith, offering to help with the dishes and asking about her health. "Grandma Edith, how have you been? I hope you didn't miss me too much." "I've been fine, thank you." Brandon and Walter exchanged confused glances. What had caused this sudden change in Vanessa's behavior? That night, when she thought everyone was asleep, Brandon overheard her whispering on the phone in the backyard. "Yes, I'm following the plan. No, they don't suspect anything. I just need a few more days to get what we want." Brandon realized Vanessa was pretending to have changed. It was a new strategy to lower the family's guard and get what she wanted. The next day, Brandon told his father what he'd heard. "Dad, she's faking it. She's planning something." "But Brandon, she's been so different." "That's exactly why we should be suspicious. People don't change overnight like that." Walter was torn between believing in his wife's change and trusting his son's suspicions. Then, Grandma Edith shared crucial information. "Brandon, this morning Vanessa asked if I'd made a will yet. She said it was important for someone my age to have these things sorted." "And what did you say?" "I told her I hadn't thought about it. She kept insisting I should see a lawyer soon." Brandon understood immediately what was happening. Vanessa wanted Grandma Edith to make a will that would benefit Walter, and by extension herself since they were married. "Grandma, you can't sign any documents without talking to me and Dad first, okay?" "Of course, my grandson." Brandon decided to speed up his own plans. He went to the notary's office where Grandma Edith had said she would make her will and spoke with a trusted clerk. "I need help protecting an elderly lady who might be getting taken advantage of." The clerk, moved by the situation, explained the necessary legal precautions and suggested that Grandma Edith make her will with either Brandon or Walter present. When Brandon returned home, he found Vanessa chatting excitedly with Grandma Edith in the living room. "Brandon, perfect timing. I was just talking to your grandma about the importance of organizing personal documents." "What kind of documents?" Brandon asked, pretending to know nothing. "A will, mainly. It's important to avoid future family problems." "It really is important," Brandon agreed. "Actually, Grandma, I booked an appointment at the notary's for tomorrow. I'll go with you to make sure everything's done right." Brandon saw Vanessa's face tighten slightly before she forced a smile back. "That's great. Can I come along too?" "No need to trouble yourself. It's a quick, simple process." That night, Brandon overheard Vanessa on the phone again. This time she sounded irritated. "That kid is ruining everything. No, he won't let her make the will unsupervised. I need a plan B." Brandon realized he had to act fast. Vanessa was getting desperate, and desperate people could be dangerous. The next morning, he took Grandma Edith to the notaries as promised. There, with the clerk's help, she made a will leaving the house to Brandon and stipulating that Walter could live there for the rest of his life, but couldn't sell it. "Now it's protected, Grandma. No one can force the sale of the house." "You're so smart, my grandson. Thank you for looking out for me." When they got home, Vanessa was waiting anxiously. "How did it go? Everything go smoothly?" "Yes, it was fine," Grandma Edith replied without details. Brandon watched Vanessa closely the rest of the day. She seemed restless and made several hushed phone calls. Something was about to happen. At dinner that night, Vanessa made an announcement. "Walter, sweetheart, I have a surprise for you." "What surprise?" "I landed a great job in another city. It pays really well, and we can start a new life there, just the two of us." Walter looked confused, glancing at Brandon and Grandma Edith. "But what about my family?" "Your mum can come with us if she wants, and Brandon's an adult. He can take care of himself." Brandon sensed a trap. Vanessa wanted to isolate Walter from his family to control him completely. "Dad, what city is this?" It's upstate New York," Vanessa answered quickly. "A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "And what exactly is the job?" Brandon pressed. "Managing a family business. Walter would have to start immediately." Brandon knew she was lying. There was no job, just an excuse to pull his father away. "Dad, don't you think you should look into this opportunity before deciding?" "Of course," Walter agreed. "I'd need to see contracts, talk to the company." "Sweetheart, they need an answer fast. The job starts next week." "Next week?" Walter's eyes widened. "That's way too rushed, Vanessa." Brandon saw Vanessa growing frustrated with the resistance. "Walter, don't you trust me?" "I do, but I have to be responsible. I can't just quit my current job overnight. If we don't take this, we'll lose it forever." "Then maybe it's not the right opportunity for us," Walter said firmly. Vanessa stood up from the table, visibly upset. "You always choose them over me," she said, pointing at Brandon and Grandma Edith. "I don't know what else to do to make you understand we're a couple and should live our own life. Vanessa, they're my family." "And what about me? Am I not your family?" "Of course you are, but I shouldn't have to choose between you." Vanessa stormed out of the room, stomping her feet. Brandon saw his father was visibly shaken by the argument. "Dad, you did the right thing. You shouldn't make rushed decisions. But what if she's right? What if I'm missing a good opportunity out of fear?" "Dad, if it were a real opportunity, they'd give you time to get things in order properly." Walter sighed, clearly unsure what to do. That night, Brandon woke up to strange noises in the house. He got up quietly and saw a light on in the study. Peering through the door crack, he spotted Vanessa going through Walter's files. She was taking pictures of documents with her phone, bank statements and work papers. He also saw her take some papers and slip them into her bag. Brandon returned to his room without a sound, but spent the rest of the night awake, thinking about what to do. Vanessa was gathering information about the family's finances. But why? The next morning, after Vanessa left, Brandon told his father what he'd seen. "Dad, she took some of your documents. I think she's planning something serious." "What kind of documents?" "Bank statements, work information." Walter grew worried and went to check the study. Sure enough, some important papers were missing. "Why would she take those things, Brandon?" "Maybe to take out loans or financing in your name, Dad." "That's a crime." "Which is why we need to act fast." Walter decided to go to the bank to check for any suspicious activity in his accounts. Meanwhile, Brandon went to the betting parlor to talk to the owner. "Good afternoon. I'd like to talk about a customer named Vanessa Wilson." "Vanessa? Why do you want to know about her?" "I'm family. We're worried about her debts." The man eyed Brandon suspiciously before answering. "She owes a considerable amount here. She's been promising to pay for weeks, but always makes excuses." About how much? Around 15,000, and the interest grows every day. Brandon was shocked. 15,000 was a lot of money, enough to drive anyone to desperation. Did she say how she'd pay? She said she's expecting an inheritance soon. But I've heard that story from plenty of people who never paid. Brandon understood everything. Vanessa was counting on Grandma Edith's inheritance to cover her debts. That's why she'd been pushing so hard for her to finalize the will quickly. When he got home, he found Walter back from the bank. "Brandon, there was nothing suspicious at the bank, but the manager warned me to watch out for loan attempts in my name." "Dad, I found out something serious. Vanessa owes 15,000 at the betting parlor." 15,000? Walter went pale. Where would she get that kind of money? "She was counting on Grandma's inheritance, Dad. That's why she wanted her to make the will so badly." "My God. So everything you said about her being after our money was true?" "Unfortunately, yes, Dad." Walter sank onto the couch, visibly shaken by the revelation. "What do I do now, Brandon? How do I even talk to her about this?" "I think we need to protect ourselves first, Dad. Then we talk." Brandon suggested his father change all his card and bank account passwords. He also advised Grandma Edith to keep all important documents in a safe place. When Vanessa came home that night, she found the family gathered in the living room with serious expressions. "What's going on? Why does everyone look like that?" "Vanessa, we need to talk," Walter said. "Talk about what?" "About your debts at the betting house." Vanessa visibly paled but tried to maintain her composure. "What debts? I don't know what you're talking about." $15,000, Vanessa. That's a lot of money." "Who told you that?" she asked, glaring furiously at Brandon. "That doesn't matter. What matters is you hid a serious problem from me." "Walter, I wanted to handle it myself so I wouldn't worry you. By lying to me, stealing my personal documents." Vanessa realized she'd been caught in multiple lies. "I can explain everything." "Then explain. And explain why you were photographing my bank statements too." "I was just trying to understand our financial situation so we could figure it out together. Without consulting me. I was afraid of how you'd react." Brandon watched the conversation silently. Vanessa was playing the victim, but her excuses made no sense. "And the man you met at the cafe?" Brandon asked. Vanessa shot him a hateful look. "What man?" Brandon showed the photos on his phone. Vanessa had no way to deny it. "That's Richard, isn't it? The same one you texted saying you'd get money by getting rid of me and Grandma." Walter looked at Vanessa in shock. "What message is this?" Brandon showed the WhatsApp conversation. Vanessa tried to snatch the phone, but Walter stopped her. "No, Vanessa. No more lies." "Walter, I can explain. That man, he's a loan shark. I was desperate." "So you admit you owe money to loan sharks too?" I got into a bad situation, but I just wanted to fix it without hurting us." "Hurting us? Vanessa, you're trying to steal from my family." "It's not stealing. I just wanted you to see we need to live our lives without interference." "Interference?" Grandma Edith spoke for the first time. "Son, am I interference in your life?" Walter looked at his mother with tears in his eyes. "Of course not, Mom. You've never been interference. You and Brandon are the most important people in my life." Vanessa realized she'd lost all control. "Fine, I get it. You chose them over me. Again." "Vanessa, it's not about choosing. It's about honesty and respect." "Respect? You want to talk about respect? Then respect me as your wife." "How can I respect someone who lies, manipulates, and tries to hurt my family?" Vanessa fell silent for a few seconds, then her expression turned icy. "You know what, Walter? You deserve each other. A pathetic family stuck in an old house with a woman who holds everyone back." "Get out of my house!" Brandon stood up, unable to bear the insults to his grandmother. "It's not your house, kid. It's my husband's." "Actually," Grandma Edith said calmly, "it's my house, and I want you to leave too." Vanessa stared at her in confusion. "Your house? The deed is in my name, always has been." "That's a lie." Brandon fetched a copy of the deed, and showed it to Vanessa. She visibly trembled. "So, you've all been lying to me this whole time?" "No one lied," Walter said. "You never asked. And even if you had, it wouldn't have mattered because I loved you. Truly." "Loved?" "Vanessa, how can I keep loving someone who lied about everything, who tried to hurt my family for money?" Vanessa stood silent, processing her failed plans. "Fine," she finally said. "I'll leave, but you'll regret this." "Regret what?" Brandon asked. "Losing the chance to be happy." "Walter, you're going to spend the rest of your life taking care of an old woman and being dependent on your son. Congratulations on your choice." "I'd rather that than live with someone who only wants to use me," Walter replied firmly. Vanessa went upstairs and started packing her bags. Meanwhile, the family remained in the living room in silence, processing everything that had happened. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm sad, Brandon. Sad that I was deceived, but relieved to have found out the truth before it was too late." "My son," Grandma Edith placed her hand on Walter's arm, "you're a good man who was tricked by a bad person. That doesn't diminish your kindness." "Thank you, Mom. And I'm sorry I let her treat you all so poorly. The important thing is that everything's back to normal now," said Brandon. Vanessa came downstairs with 2 large suitcases and stopped at the living room door. "Walter, last chance. Are you coming with me or staying with them?" "I'm staying with my family." "Then don't come looking for me when you regret it." She left, slamming the door. Through the window, they saw a car pulling up in front of the house. It was that Richard who had come to pick her up. "At least now we know she really was in another relationship," Brandon remarked. "And she must be counting on him to settle her debts," Walter added. The family spent the rest of the evening talking and reconnecting. Walter apologized repeatedly for being so blind about Vanessa, and both Brandon and Grandma Edith forgave him completely. "Dad, any man can be fooled by a clever woman. What matters is that you found out in time. And learn to value those who truly love you," Grandma Edith added. In the following days, the family's life gradually returned to normal. Walter cancelled all the joint accounts he had with Vanessa and changed all his passwords. He also consulted a lawyer about the divorce process. Brandon went back to work at Mr. Joe's shop, who welcomed him with open arms. "How were these weeks, kid?" "Complicated, Mr. Joe, but in the end, everything worked out." That's how family is. Sometimes you go through storms, but when there's real love, you always find your way back. A week later, Brandon received an unexpected call. It was from the owner of the betting house. "Kid, that woman you asked about, she showed up here yesterday with a man trying to make a deal." "What kind of deal?" "They wanted to pay part of the debt now and the rest in installments. But when I said I'd only accept full payment up front, they got really nervous." "What happened?" "They left, promising to come back with the money. But it's hard to believe." Brandon figured Vanessa was trying to convince Richard to help her with the debts, but apparently he wasn't willing to do so. A few days later, a neighbor approached Walter. "Mr. Walter, your ex-wife came by yesterday asking if I'd seen you all leaving the house with suitcases." "Suitcases? Why would she ask that?" "She said you were supposed to meet somewhere and didn't show up. I thought it was strange." Brandon realized Vanessa was still trying to get information about the family, maybe for another scam attempt. "Dad, I think we need to be even more careful." "You're right. Desperate people might try anything." Walter decided to install a basic security system in the house and told Grandma Edith not to answer the door for strangers. One morning, 2 weeks after Vanessa left, Brandon found Grandma Edith in the kitchen with a worried expression. "What happened, Grandma?" "Brandon, I got a strange call this morning. A woman claiming to be from the hospital said your father had been in an accident." "What? Dad left for work like normal." "Exactly. That's why I thought it was odd. I called his job and he's there, perfectly fine." Brandon felt a chill. That seemed like an attempt to get Grandma Edith out of the house to meet Vanessa. "Grandma, you can't leave the house alone for now, okay? If someone calls saying there's a problem, call me or Dad first." "All right, my grandson. I thought it was suspicious too." Brandon called his dad at work to warn him about the situation. "Dad, someone called Grandma pretending to be from the hospital." "Oh my God, it could have been Vanessa trying something." "That's what I think too. We'll have to be even more careful." That evening, when Walter got home from work, he found Brandon and Grandma Edith visibly tense. Did something else happen? This afternoon, a man drove past the house several times, Brandon said. He seemed to be watching. Do you think it could be that Richard? It's possible, Dad. Maybe they're planning something. Walter decided it was time to take stronger action. I'll go to the police tomorrow to file a report about everything that's been happening. Good idea, Dad. It's better to have everything documented. The next day, Walter went to the police station and reported the whole situation. The manipulation attempts, the fake calls, and the suspicious surveillance. The officer advised him to keep records of any new contact attempts and promised to have a patrol car pass by the house occasionally. For a few days, everything was calm. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, Grandma Edith was home alone when the doorbell rang. Following the family's instructions, she looked through the window before answering. It was a young woman she didn't recognize. "Who is it?" she asked without opening the door. "I'm from social services. I'm here to check on your living conditions." Grandma Edith was immediately suspicious. No visit had been scheduled. "There wasn't any appointment. You can come back another day and talk to my son." "Ma'am, it'll be quick. I just need to ask a few questions. I'm not opening the door. If you're really from social services, you can come back when my son is here." The woman insisted for a few more minutes, but eventually left. Grandma Edith immediately called Brandon. "Grandson, a woman came by saying she was from social services. You did the right thing not opening the door, Grandma. I'll come home now." Brandon left work early and headed home. When he got there, he asked the neighbors if they'd seen the woman. One neighbor confirmed seeing a young woman, but said she got into a car with a man after leaving Grandma Edith's house. "Grandma, did you get a good look at her?" "She was young, blonde, well-dressed, but something about her gave me a bad feeling." Brandon suspected it could be someone connected to Vanessa, or even Vanessa herself in disguise. The contact attempts were becoming more frequent and creative. When Walter got home from work, Brandon told him about the new incident. "Dad, I think they're trying to find a way into the house or to get Grandma out of here." "But why? They already know the house can't be sold without your grandmother's permission. Maybe they want to convince her to sign some document or take something valuable from the house." "What valuable thing?" Brandon remembered his mother's jewelry in the safe. "Mom's jewelry, Dad. It must be worth a lot." "That's true. And Vanessa knows it exists. We need to move that jewelry to a bank safe, Dad. It's not safe here." The next day, Walter and Brandon went to the bank with Grandma Edith and rented a safe deposit box where they stored the jewelry and other important documents. Now, even if someone got into the house, they wouldn't find anything valuable. A few more weeks passed without incident. The family was starting to relax when they got unexpected news. Mr. Joe came to see Brandon at the store with a worried expression. "Brandon, my wife saw your ex-stepmother at the pharmacy yesterday. She was asking about you." "Asking what?" "If you still lived in the same house, if your grandmother was in good health, that kind of thing." "And what did your wife say?" "She said she didn't know anything, but she got the impression the woman was investigating you." Brandon thanked them for the information and went straight home to tell his father. It was clear Vanessa hadn't given up on her plans. "Dad, she's still around. She didn't leave like we thought." "But what else could she want, Brandon? She already knows she can't access our assets." "Maybe she's waiting for an opportunity or planning something different." That night, the family had a serious talk about the situation. "Maybe it's time we think about moving," Walter suggested. "No, Dad," Grandma Edith said firmly. "This has been my home for over 40 years. I won't leave because of one bad person." "But Mom, it could be dangerous." "My son, I've lived a long life. I won't spend my last years afraid and hiding." Brandon admired his grandmother's courage, but was still worried about her safety. "Then let's tighten security here, Grandma. It doesn't hurt to be cautious." They installed extra locks, a simple alarm system, and asked the neighbors to watch for anything suspicious. The following weekend, Brandon was in the backyard helping Grandma Edith with the garden when he saw a car parked at the corner with two people inside. He pretended not to notice and kept working but memorized the license plate. That night, he told his father what he'd seen. I think they're watching us, Dad. I'll call that detective tomorrow and report this. On Sunday morning, as the family got ready for church, Brandon saw the same car again. This time, he could make out a man and a woman inside, but couldn't tell if it was Vanessa. Dad, they're back. Let's leave through the back door and go around. I don't want a confrontation. They took a different route to church and stayed out all morning. When they returned in the afternoon, the car was gone. On Monday, the detective returned Walter's call. Mr. Walter, we checked the plate you gave us. The car is registered to a man named Richard Davis. That's the man who was with my ex-wife. We'll increase patrols on your street. If they show up again, call immediately. The car didn't reappear during the week, but Brandon had a feeling they were being watched in other ways. Sometimes he noticed strangers walking past more than once, or unfamiliar cars parked in odd spots. On Friday, when Brandon got home from work, he found Grandma Edith visibly upset. What happened, Grandma? A woman tried to deliver a letter here, saying it was from the courthouse. What letter? I didn't take it. I told her she should give it to your father in person. You did the right thing, it could have been another trick. When Walter arrived, Brandon told him about the attempted delivery. What courthouse sends a letter without notice? Walter asked. Exactly, Dad. It was just another attempt to get access to the house, or to make Grandma sign something. That night, Brandon had trouble sleeping. He felt something was about to happen. Vanessa and Richard were pushing too hard to just give up. In the early hours, he was woken by a noise in the backyard. He got up quietly and looked out the window. A shadow was moving near the back house. Brandon woke his father without a sound, and they went to check. Through the kitchen window, they saw a man trying to force open the back door. Walter called the police while Brandon kept watch. The man managed to open the door and stepped inside. Go take care of Grandma, Walter whispered to Brandon. I'll keep him busy until the police get here. No, Dad, it's dangerous. Go, protect your grandmother. Brandon went to Grandma Edith's room and woke her up. Grandma, there's someone in the house. Let's hide in the bathroom until the police arrive. Grandma Edith, despite the scare, stayed calm and followed Brandon silently. They locked themselves in the bathroom attached to her room and listened to the noises in the house. They could hear Walter talking to someone in the living room. What do you want? Walter asked. Where are the house documents? Replied a male voice Brandon recognized as Richard's. What documents? Don't pretend you don't know. The deed, the notary papers. Why do you want them? That's none of your business. Brandon heard footsteps in the house, as if Richard was searching for something. A few minutes later, he heard sirens approaching. The police are here, he whispered to Grandma Edith. Thank God, she replied. They heard shouts and movement in the house. Then everything fell silent. Brandon waited a few minutes before leaving the bathroom with his grandmother. In the living room, they found two officers talking to Walter. Richard was handcuffed on the couch. Everything's fine, Walter said, hugging Brandon and Grandma Edith. He didn't manage to take anything. What was he looking for? Brandon asked. The house documents, one of the officers answered. Apparently, someone convinced him he could make money if he got those papers. Vanessa, Brandon murmured. Richard was taken to the station, where he confessed that Vanessa had promised to split the money with him if he got access to the family documents. She said you'd hidden important papers proving she was entitled to part of the inheritance, the officer reported the next day. What inheritance? Walter asked. My mother is still alive. According to him, she made up a story that your mother had promised to leave part of the house to her in the will. Brandon shook his head. Vanessa had dragged Richard into her schemes with lies. And where is Vanessa now? We're still looking. Richard said she promised to meet him after he got the documents, but she disappeared. The family returned home with the feeling that the nightmare was finally over. Richard was in custody and Vanessa had fled, likely realizing her plans had failed completely. A few days later, they got a call from the officer with an update. We found Vanessa trying to leave town with fake documents. She's been arrested for fraud and breaking and entering. And now, Walter asked, now you can live in peace. She'll face the charges and will likely be convicted. Brandon felt immense relief. Finally, after months of tension and fear, the family could return to normal. But one last surprise was waiting for them. A week after Vanessa's arrest, an elderly woman showed up at their door looking for Walter. Sorry to bother you, My name is Mary Wilson. I'm Vanessa's mother. Walter, Brandon, and Grandma Edith were stunned by the visit. Please come in, Walter said, ever polite. In the living room, Mary explained the reason for her visit. I came to apologize for what my daughter did to you, and also to explain some things that might help you understand. You don't need to apologize, ma'am, Grandma Edith said kindly. You're not responsible for your daughter's actions. Thank you for your kindness, but I do feel partly to blame. Mary then shared a story that left everyone shocked. Vanessa isn't my biological daughter. I adopted her when she was 15 after her birth mother passed away. And who was her birth mother? Brandon asked. A woman named Sarah, who had dated Walter many years ago. Walter turned pale at the name. Sarah? Sarah Mitchell? Yes. Did you know her? We dated over 20 years ago. But she disappeared without any explanation. She was pregnant, Walter. Pregnant with your child. The silence that followed was deafening. Brandon looked at his father, who was visibly shaken by the revelation. Vanessa is my daughter. Yes. Sarah told me before she died. She said she never had the courage to reach out because you had married and started a family. But why did Vanessa never tell me anything? Because she grew up angry. Sarah always spoke of you with resentment, saying you had abandoned her when she was pregnant. Vanessa grew up believing you knew about the pregnancy and chose to ignore it. Brandon tried to process the information. Vanessa was his half-sister. She had married her own father. How was this even possible? Asked Brandon. Vanessa found out who her biological father was when she turned 18. But instead of seeking him out to introduce herself as his daughter, she decided to get revenge. Revenge for what? Asked Walter, still in shock. She thought you had knowingly abandoned Sarah, that you knew about the pregnancy and chose to ignore it to stay with your wife. But I never knew, Walter protested. Sarah just vanished. I looked for her, but no one knew where she was. I tried to explain this to Vanessa many times, but she was blinded by anger. When she learned you had been widowed, she saw an opportunity to get close and cause pain. That's why she was so determined to destroy our family, concluded Brandon. Exactly. To her, you represented the family she never had, the family she believed had been denied to her. Grandma Edith, who had listened in silence, finally spoke. What a tragedy. A story of misunderstandings that caused so much suffering. Walter, said Mary, I brought some letters Sarah wrote to you, but never had the courage to send. Mary pulled a bundle of yellowed letters from her bag. Walter took them with trembling hands. May I read them? Of course. Sarah always hoped that one day you would know the truth. Walter opened the first letter and began reading aloud. My dearest Walter, I write this letter knowing I'll never have the courage to send it. I'm pregnant with your child, but I can't destroy your happiness by telling you. You've just gotten married and seem so happy. I'll leave and raise our daughter alone. I just want you to know that I love you and that our daughter will be raised with love. Walter began to cry as he read Sarah's words. If I had known, I would have taken responsibility. Sarah knew that, said Mary, but she was proud and didn't want to be seen as the woman who destroyed a marriage. Brandon stood up and hugged his father. Dad, none of this was your fault. You couldn't have known something that was hidden from you. But Vanessa, my own daughter, how could I have married her without knowing? You didn't recognize each other, said Mary. Sarah changed Vanessa's last name when she registered her, and she grew up far from here. There was no way for you to know. What will happen to her now? Asked Grandma Edith. She's in jail awaiting trial, but I believe once she learns you never knew about the pregnancy, she'll realize she was wrong about everything. I'd like to talk to her, said Walter. Are you sure? Asked Brandon, after everything she's done. Brandon, she's my daughter. Even after all the pain she's caused, I need to try and explain the truth to her. Mary smiled for the first time since she'd arrived. I'm sure Sarah would be happy to know you want to meet your daughter, even under these circumstances. A few days later, Walter went to the prison to visit Vanessa. The meeting was tense at first, with her refusing to believe he truly hadn't known about Sarah's pregnancy. You're lying, she said. My mother looked for you. Vanessa, I have the letters she wrote, but never sent. She chose not to tell me. Walter showed the letters to Vanessa, who read them with tears in her eyes. She really never told you? No. And if I had known, I would have taken responsibility. You are my daughter, even if I found out in the worst possible way. Vanessa began to cry, realizing she had spent years avenging something that never happened. What I did to you, to your family. What you did was based on wrong information. You grew up believing a lie. But I married you. How could I do that? None of us knew, Vanessa. It was a tragedy of misunderstandings. Vanessa spent the next few weeks in prison reflecting on everything that had happened. When she finally went to trial, she confessed to all the crimes and showed genuine remorse. The judge, considering the mitigating circumstances and her repentance, gave a lighter sentence. 2 years in prison, half in closed confinement and half on probation, provided she attended psychological therapy. During her time in prison, Vanessa wrote several letters to Walter, Brandon, and Grandma Edith, asking for forgiveness and explaining how anger had clouded her judgment for so many years. When she was released on probation, she sought out the family in person. I don't expect forgiveness, she said at the door. I just want you to know I understand the gravity of what I did and that I'm truly sorry. Come in, said Grandma Edith, surprising everyone. Let's talk. In the living room, Vanessa shared how she had grown up believing her father had abandoned her, how she had planned revenge for years, and how discovering the truth had shattered all her anger. I destroyed my chance at having a family because of a misunderstanding, she said, and I almost destroyed yours too. The damage is done, said Brandon, but you're still young. You can rebuild your life. How? After everything I've done? By being a better person from now on, Grandma Edith replied wisely. The past can't be changed, but the future is still unwritten. Walter looked at the young woman who was his daughter and felt a mix of sadness and compassion. Vanessa, I'd like to help you rebuild your life, but I need time to process all this. I understand, and I'll prove I deserve a second chance. Vanessa moved to another city and started a new life. She found honest work, attended therapy regularly, and slowly earned the family's trust. A year later, she returned for a visit. She was different, more mature, at peace, and genuinely remorseful. How are you? Asked Brandon. Better. Therapy has helped me understand my feelings and my anger. And what do you plan for the future? I want to finish the degree I abandoned and maybe work helping others who've been through tough situations like mine. Grandma Edith, Everwise, said, Everyone deserves a second chance when they show true remorse. Thank you, Grandma Edith. You've always been kinder to me than I deserved. No one is undeserving of kindness, my dear. Over time, the relationship between Vanessa and the family normalized. It was no longer one of mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, nor stepmother and stepchild, but something new, a daughter who had been lost and was trying to find her way back. Brandon, who had initially resisted, eventually developed a brotherly affection for Vanessa. After all, she was his sister, even if for a short time she had been his stepmother. It's strange to think that for 2 years I lived with my sister thinking she was my stepmother, he remarked to his father. Life sometimes writes stories no screenwriter would dare invent, Walter replied. 2 years after the scandal, the family had found a new balance. Walter had matured greatly through his experiences and had grown closer to Brandon and Grandma Edith. Vanessa visited occasionally and had a respectful relationship with everyone, especially with Grandma Edith, who treated her like a granddaughter. Grandma, Brandon said one Sunday afternoon, do you think we did the right thing by forgiving Vanessa? My dear, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending nothing happened. It means choosing not to let anger keep hurting you. And you don't feel angry about what she did? I feel pity, Brandon. Pity for a young woman who grew up with so much hatred in her heart that she nearly destroyed herself. And us too. You're very wise, Grandma. I'm not wise, I'm old. And when you get old, you realize life is too short to waste on anger and revenge. Brandon hugged his grandmother, grateful to have a family that valued forgiveness and unity above all else. 3 years later, Vanessa graduated with a degree in psychology and began working at a clinic that helped families in crisis. Her own experiences made her especially effective in helping people deal with anger and resentment. During one of her visits with the family, she shared some news. "I wanted to tell you all something. I've met someone." "How wonderful," Grandma Edith said. "Tell us about them." "He's a co-worker, a very kind person who helps me become a better version of myself every day." "And does he know our story?" Walter asked. "He knows everything, and he still accepts me as I am. He says my past has made me stronger and more empathetic." Brandon smiled, seeing the change in his sister. "We're happy for you, Vanessa." "Thank you. You all taught me it's possible to start over, even after making terrible mistakes." "We all make mistakes," Walter said. "What matters is learning from them." On Christmas Eve that year, Vanessa arrived at the house with her boyfriend, a kind and respectful young man who was immediately welcomed by the family. During dinner, Grandma Edith, now 79 but still sharp, raised a toast. "I want to thank God for giving me a family that knew how to overcome hardships and grow even stronger together. Sometimes, storms exist to show us just how much we love each other." "To family," Walter said, lifting his glass. "To family," everyone echoed. Brandon looked around the table and felt grateful for the journey they had taken. Since that afternoon, when he'd sat on the sidewalk with a backpack on his shoulders, so much had changed. He had nearly lost his family, but in the end he had regained it, stronger than ever. Vanessa, sitting beside her boyfriend, smiled genuinely for the first time in years. The hatred she had carried for so long had been replaced by peace and gratitude. "Walter," she said, "thank you for giving me the chance to truly be your daughter. Thank you for letting me be your father, even after everything." That night, after everyone had left, Brandon helped Grandma Edith clean the kitchen. "Grandma, did you ever imagine things would turn out like this?" "I didn't imagine it, but I hoped for it. I've always believed love is stronger than hate. Even when Vanessa was being awful to us. Especially then, my dear. It's easy to love when everything is good. The hard part is loving when things are difficult." Brandon reflected on his grandmother's words. She was right. The love that had held their family together during the crisis was the same love that had allowed them to forgive and welcome Vanessa back. A few months later, Vanessa announced her engagement. She asked Walter to walk her down the aisle, a symbolic gesture of complete reconciliation. "It would be an honor," he said, moved. The wedding was simple but full of meaning. The whole family was there, including Grandma Edith, who, despite her age, insisted on being part of every important moment. During the ceremony, the pastor spoke about second chances and forgiveness, touching everyone deeply. "True love isn't the kind that never faces hardships, but the kind that overcomes every hardship," he said. After the ceremony, at the small but joyful celebration, Vanessa approached Brandon. "Brother, thank you for giving me the chance to start over. Thank you for showing me that real change is possible." They embraced finally as siblings who love and respect each other. Grandma Edith, watching the scene from her table, smiled with satisfaction. At 80 years old, she had seen her family fall apart and rebuild stronger than ever. "My God," she whispered, "thank you for letting me see this day." End of story. And now, dear listeners, we'd love to know, what did you think of this story of forgiveness and family rebuilding? Do you believe Vanessa deserved a second chance after the truth about her past came to light? How would you react if you were in Brandon or Walter's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. We love reading your honest reflections on our stories. Don't forget to leave a like if the story moved you, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.